What if you could enter dreams with other people? And what if there was an entire underground industry where people stole information from these dreams? This is the premise of one of my favorite movies of all time. And today we're going to be going through the layers of this dream heist and ask ourselves, what does any of it actually mean? My name is Kyrie. This is Flights of Fantasy, a show where we look at different science fiction and fantasy movies and ask, what do they mean? And this is Inception. Also, it's my birthday, so if you don't watch this video, you're kind of the jerk here. The world of Inception starts with the premise that dream-sharing technology exists. Actually, in the marketing campaign for Inception, they released a redacted government handbook on dream sharing, as well as a manual for the device that is supposed to facilitate it, a passive. While neither of these books or marketing materials make it into the movie, I think it gives you a pretty good idea of the world building and lore that went into making this movie. Like any other technology that exists, there's an entire illegal industry around dream sharing. So let's go over some of the roles in that. There's the architect who builds the world of the dream. There's the dreamer, who's basically, their mind is basically the venue for this dream. And then there's the subject, the person who's being brought into the dream and fills it with their subconscious, these NPCs that are called projections. We've also got chemists, and they basically make different formula compounds of somnacin, which is the drug that makes dream sharing possible. Our main character is a guy named Dominic Cobb. He's played by Leonardo DiCaprio, although initially the role was also offered to Brad Pitt and Will Smith, but they both turned it down. And I'm really glad that they did that because Leo does a great job at playing men who are haunted with baggage. Cobb is a thief who specializes in corporate espionage, and he's been on the run worldwide ever since he was framed for the murder of his wife, Mal. His main goal is to get back to America where his two children are. Even though she's dead, Dom still sees his projection of Mal whenever he dreams, and she creates quite a lot of problems for him. For example, she sabotages this job that Dom and his bestie Arthur are on in the beginning of the movie. But she's played by Marion Cotillard, whose face is beautiful and I like to look at it, and she looks glamorous the entire movie, so she gets a pass. After the failed extraction attempt, Dom is actually given the opportunity to get back to the States by the guy that they failed to extract on, Mr. Saito. He's a very powerful businessman, and his main competitor is in poor health, and most likely won't live long. But this isn't a normal job. Instead of extracting information from somebody, Saito wants Dom to plant an idea. He wants him to perform Inception. The idea in question is that he wants his main competitor's son to break up his father's company after he dies and inherits it. Cobb's bestie Arthur is extremely skeptical and says that Inception hasn't been done successfully before. The subject can always trace the genesis of the idea. But then Dom surprises him and says that it is possible and seems to be humoring this job. He just wants to know that Saito can keep up his end of the bargain because it's quite a big ask. But then Saito hits him with this.
Do you want to take a leap of faith or become an old man? Filled with regret, waiting to die alone.
This is actually the second time that we've heard this weird phrase used, and it won't be the last. I'll get into the significance of it later. So Cobb accepts the job and he forms his team, which includes recruiting a forger named Eames and an architecture student, Ariana Grande. So this movie has some weird names, and like most things in this movie, that's not by accident. So let's go through them and see what the heck they mean. First we've got Dom. His last name Cobb actually sounds like Coab, which means dream in a couple of different languages. Cobb is also an old word for spider, hence cobweb. Which, if you think about it, Cobb being an architect of dreams, he's spinning these elaborate webs and trapping people in them and extracting their information, so that's pretty fitting. Next we've got Robert Fischer. He is the mark for this dream heist, the subject of the dream. His last name could be a reference to the Arthurian legend of the Fischer King, whose kingdom physically changed depending on his mental state and physical wounds. His name also could be a reference to Robert Bobby Fischer, who is one of the most famous chess players in history. Next up, we've got our handsome forger, Eames. Now you might be thinking, Eames, that sounds like dreams, but without the DR. That's just wrong and silly. Why would they name a character that? That's just silly. It's actually a nod to a couple of prominent architects and designers, Charles and Ray Eames. Next we've got Ariana Grande, if you will. This one comes from mythology. I think most people are pretty familiar with the myth of the Minotaur and the Labyrinth, the massive maze, impossible maze, and the monster that's inside of it. Ariadne, in mythology, was a character who helped a hero, Theseus, get out of the labyrinth. So it's a character that's frequently associated with mazes and labyrinths. Finally, we've got Maul, Dom's dead wife who is haunting him in his dreams and making it quite challenging for this man to make a living. Maul does bad things to Cobb, so her name means bad. No, I'm kidding. I mean, I'm not kidding about her name meaning bad. It does mean bad, like in French, but I'll go into a bit more significance of that later on when we talk about French music. These names are very specifically picked, because if you take the first letter of all of these names, you get the word dream, but it doesn't stop there. So because I wrote it down before I said it, I want you to, when I say, but maybe you already knew that, and before yeah, just make that like a close-up of me without the board. Don't show the board until I reveal this next part, if that makes sense.
Here I come.
But maybe you already knew that. It's a fun detail that a lot of people know. But did you know it goes a little bit deeper? If you add the names Saito, Peter, Arthur, and Yusuf, you actually get a phrase. Dreams pay. But it goes deeper than that, Mason, because actually, dreams pay is an anagram, and I'm surprised that nobody has broken this before, so I'm happy to be sharing this with you. If you solve this complicated secret anagram, you get the real answer to Inception, what this whole movie is all about. Padre Yams. Back to the story. I don't want you to include any footage of, I'm gonna try to cut it out before I send it to you, but just in case I don't get it all, don't include any footage of me writing this, because that would be boring to watch, you know? I'd rather just like... Because Ariadne serves as our fish out of water in this movie, we learn a lot more about building the world of the dream. Because you are, in fact, creating that world, there are a lot of different tips and tricks that you can use to extract information from somebody. For example, if you put a safe inside of a dream, the subject or the mark will automatically, subconsciously fill that safe with information that they're trying to protect. You can also have multiple layers of a dream. So when you and your subject initially go to sleep, you would be considered in the first dream layer. But inside of that dream, you can actually dream up the device that makes dream sharing possible and go into a dream within a dream, the second dream layer. I think the idea here is that the deeper layers that you go, the more likely it is that you'll find whatever information you're trying to extract, or in this case, the more likely you would be to be able to successfully implant an idea. But you have to be careful not to go too far, because then you might end up in limbo, but we'll talk about limbo in just a little bit. It's important to know that because of, I don't know, brain function, something or other, time moves differently within each of the layers of the dream. So what might be 12 hours in reality can equate to maybe a couple of days or a couple of weeks in the first layer. And that might equate to a couple of months or years in the second layer. And that might exponentially increase, and so on and so forth. For this job, the time in each of the layers ends up being this.
It's a week, the first level down. 6 months, the second level down, and the third level.
It's 10 years.
I find the ways that these layers are connected to be really interesting and fun. So whatever's happening in reality or in the upper layers of the dream have an impact on the dream layers beneath it. For instance, when this van is driving off of a bridge, it hits the barrier and then goes into a brief freefall. When it hits the barrier in this first layer of the dream, it causes a massive shift in gravity in the second layer of the dream. When the car is briefly in freefall, that creates zero gravity in the second dream layer. While we still maintain gravity in layer 3, the impact of hitting that barrier creates an avalanche in layer 3. Now, because time works differently in each of these layers, it might be difficult to coordinate things, and they've come up with a clever solution: music. So 10 seconds before Yusuf is about to drive this van off of the bridge, he puts a pair of headphones on Arthur's sleeping body and plays a very specific French song. This one. And even though the headphones are only on Arthur, because he's the dreamer in this layer and they went into his dream for this third layer, everyone and every layer of the dream can hear it in one way or another. And it allows them to calculate how much time each of the other layers have.
Yusuf's 10 seconds from the jump, which gives Arthur 3 minutes. which gives us what?
That math would stress me out so much if I was a dream extractor.
Maths was never my strong subject. How much time is that?
Tom Hardy is me in this moment. There are multiple different ways of waking up from a dream, and these are called kicks. An easy go-to kick is to die inside of the dream. You die, you wake up. How many times has this happened to you where you are asleep and you're dreaming, and then you wake up feeling like you're falling? That's another kick. The feeling of falling will wake you up, or send you to the next dream layer above. You can use these kicks to go up the different layers of the dream and then back to reality. Another thing you should know is that because there's an entire industry of people stealing from your dreams, you can pay someone to train your subconscious to hunt down and kill invaders, like an NPC army. You're basically militarizing your projections. Lastly, we have totems. So totems are a way of keeping track of what's a dream and what's reality. The idea behind a totem is that nobody else knows the specifics of it, and it behaves one way within the dream and another way in the real world. So the main example that we see used is a top. This top was actually Dom's wife's totem. Inside of a dream, it was trained to spin forever. So if you spin the top and it spins forever, you know that you're inside of a dream. And if it topples over, you know you're in reality. Although we see him use the top, that was Maul's totem. And it's theorized that Dom's real totem is actually his wedding ring. When he's inside of a dream, he's wearing it. But when he's in reality, she's dead and he's not wearing it. Dom's baggage, part 1. So as Ariadne is learning about the world of dreaming and how to be an architect, she's also learning a lot more about Dom. Dom has a lot of baggage, specifically with the whole dead wife that's sabotaging all of his jobs kind of baggage. This is actually the main reason that they need Ariadne. Although Cobb was a very, very good architect, if he knows the layout of the dreams, so does Maul, and she's able to better sabotage them. So this would be a big problem if she did this on a high-risk job like this Fischer job. So Ariadne reasonably is pretty curious about what the heck is going on, and she gets a little nosy, and she enters Dom's dream without him knowing at first. And that's where she unlocks his tragic backstory baggage. Apparently, Dom and Maul were experimenting with dreams and they wound up in limbo. Limbo is basically what happens when you get too deep into a dream. It's pure dream space, and nobody has been known to get out of limbo with their mind intact, except for Dom and Maul. And the reason for this is because what might be hours in reality or in that first layer of the dream becomes eternity in limbo. It can go on forever. Dom and Maul spent around 50 years together in limbo, in the world that they created together. Dom managed to get them out by them both simultaneously taking their lives. But when they got out of the dream, Maul didn't believe that they woke up ever. She thought that they were still in limbo, and she thought that in order to wake up, they both had to die to get back to reality, to get back to their children. Dom was, of course, very resistant to this and kept insisting, no, this is reality, we are real, everything here is real. So Maul came up with a plan. She got declared sane by 3 psychiatrists, and then she filed letters with her attorney saying that she was fearful for her life and that Dom had been threatening to kill her. She did all this secretly. Then, on the night of their anniversary, when Dom enters the hotel room and sees everything a mess, looking like there was a struggle, he finds her on the ledge of the building. Maul gives Dom an ultimatum. Jump with me or you are going to be framed for my murder. Maul might have tried doing this to make the choice easier for Dom, but that's not what happened. Maul jumped, and he's been on the run ever since, with her projection hounding him, trying to get him to doubt his reality so that he can finally join her. Oof. But it's okay, because look at how pretty she is. She even cries pretty. I just want her to read me poetry under a peach tree while we lie together. Is that so much to ask? Jeez. So this knowledge of Dom's tragic backstory is a lot for Ariadne to be taking in, especially because when she first met Dom, she initially thought it was some kind of work placement. Oh, also, Dom hasn't told anybody except for Arthur about the risks that Maul has to them. But I'm sure on this very risky, high-stakes job, it'll be fine. It'll be fine. So, we've got our team assembled. Ariadne has planned out 3 levels to this dream, and then Fischer's dad dies, so it is go time. So, their goal is to get Robert Fischer to break up his father's company. They've planned everything out pretty carefully, from the sedation that they're using to which idea they're going to be implanting in each layer of the dream. The job goes off the rails pretty quickly because, surprise, Fischer's subconscious has been trained and is militarized and is hunting them down with guns, which they were not prepared for. They're able to get Fischer in position to go into the second layer of the dream, but Saito is shot. And then, double surprise! Dying in the dream will no longer wake you up. Instead, you go...
So, now we're trapped in Fischer's mind battling his own private army, and if we get killed, we'll be lost in limbo till our brains turn to scrambled egg.
I mean, I was gonna say that, but yeah, what he said. Tom Hardy gets a pass because he's a handsome man and a very versatile actor, and I just want to watch him write me sonnets by an ocean cafe. So now they've got a ticking clock. They need to pull off this inception before Saito dies and goes to limbo and is unable to fulfill his part of the bargain. And they also need to do it quickly enough so that way the people in the upper layers aren't hunted down and killed by the projections and also go to limbo. The upside is that Saito will have more time as they go deeper into the layers, but they've still got to hustle. They go into the second layer of the dream where they basically trick Fischer into helping them break into his own subconscious. In the third layer of the dream, within this big fortress, there's a massive safe, and this is presumably where they can see if the ideas that they planted in Fischer are successfully being taken in. But before they can get Fischer to the safe, Mal happens. She shoots Fischer, and he's dead, which means he's in limbo. It's game over. But then Ariadne suggests, Cobb, why don't you and I just follow Fischer down into limbo, and then we can all ride the kicks up back to reality and wake up. And then Dom is like, yeah, okay. They do just that. The thing about limbo is that there's nothing, it's pure unconstructed dream space. Unless you're sharing a dream with somebody who's been there before, in which case it'll be everything, all of their leftovers from when they were there. I don't know how Arthur knew this, but whatever, who cares? So Dom walks Ariadne through the world that he and Mal built together, and they find her. It's then that Dom chooses to reveal some pretty important information to Ariadne, how he knew Inception was possible. He knew it was possible because he had done it before. He had done it to Mal. Record scratch. So let's circle back to Dom's baggage, shall we? Part 2. So the way that Dom tells it, Mal had accepted limbo as their new reality. And this is represented by Mal putting her totem inside of a safe. She wouldn't need to know if it's reality if she's accepted this limbo place as her new reality, right? But Dom knew that they needed to wake up and return to their real children. So he planted an idea.
A simple little idea that would change everything. That her world wasn't real.
The death was the only escape.
And the idea stuck, even after they woke up. He successfully did an inception. Incepted her. Is inception a noun or a verb? Anyway, this relates to that French song that we had mentioned earlier, the one that they used to sync up all the dreams. You know, that one. This French song roughly translates into the singer talking about how she doesn't regret any of the things that she's done. Not the good things, not the bad things, because her life starts anew and with happiness with this new person. Now, if we remember from our earlier French class, mal means bad. And mal is actually even used inside of this song to talk about the bad things that the singer doesn't regret. This song is an interesting, ironic parallel to Dom, who is like the walking embodiment of regret, especially when it comes to things with Mal. So after all that trauma dumping, Dom tells Mal that he will stay with her here in limbo, they'll stay together, if she lets Fischer go. And Ariadne's like, no, don't do that, no!
You can't stay here to be with her.
And then Dom reminds her, hey, like, Saito's probably dead by now, which means he's somewhere in limbo. I have to find him and bring him back anyway. In a huge step for his character, Cobb ends up acknowledging that the projection of Mal isn't real, and that he needs to let her go. Ariadne ends up helping him with this by peacefully murdering the projection of his dead wife, and then skedaddling. She and Fischer take a jump off the building and take a kick up to the third layer. In the third layer, Fischer is able to successfully get into the safe, and it looks like it worked. It looks like the inception was successful. Everybody except for Saito and Cobb ride the kicks up to the first layer, that first initial layer. The next thing we see is actually the cold open of the movie. A very weathered salted-looking Cobb is talking to an older man, a man that we now recognize as Saito. They have both mentally been in limbo for a very long time, 50 plus years for Saito at least. Cobb is trying to get Saito to remember that they're in a dream and to get him to come back with him. Come back with me so we can be young men together. Saito reaches for the gun, and then we have a flash of white before we see Cobb on the plane. And then my favorite song from the soundtrack plays and starts one of my favorite ending scenes. Just a general. As this beautiful song is playing, it looks like everything worked. Everybody is awake, Saito makes a call, and while initially there's some tension when Cobb is at the airport, did Saito keep up his end of the bargain, he's able to get past customs, and he's on his way home. He sees his children playing out in the yard, the same way that he had seen in his memories and his dreams over and over again. He takes Maul's totem and spins it on the table to check if he's still in a dream. But then, off screen, he sees them and he runs to them before checking to see if it actually falls or not. We hear them off screen, and then we get this zoom in to this top that's still spinning, maybe toppling towards the end. Fade to black. I saw this movie when it first came out in theaters with my little brother and my older sister. And by the end, we were all just like clutched onto each other because we were such in awe of the suspense and the Hans Zimmer of it all. And ever since then, it's been like one of my top 5 favorite movies easily. It's just stuck with me, man. I don't know. I really like this movie a lot. There was a lot of world building about dream sharing that I wanted to share with you, so I didn't cover Fischer's story super well. So I'm gonna do that really quick right now. So Robert Fischer is the son of this mega billionaire conglomerate businessman, Maurice Fischer, and their relationship has been very strained.
After my mother died, you know what he told me? Robert, there's really nothing to be said.
Well, he was bad with emotion.
I was 11, Uncle Peter.
And it ended super well.
At the end, he called me to his deathbed. He could barely speak, but he took the trouble to tell me one last thing. He pulled me close, and I could only make out one word: disappointed.
So in order to get Fischer to break up his father's company, his inheritance, the team has to navigate these complex personal family relationships and do something that no amount of money was able to do for them while Maurice was still alive. Give them therapy.
Positive emotion trumps negative emotion every time. We all yearn for reconciliation, for catharsis. We need Robert Fischer to have a positive emotional reaction to all this.
There's only one family relationship that Robert Fischer really has left in this world after his dad dies: his Uncle Peter. And that is going to be sacrificed. Basically what handsome Tom Hardy said.
That boy's relationship with his father is even worse than we imagined.
So in the first layer of the dream, they set up the stage for this fishy kidnapping of Robert and his Uncle Peter, Eames, their forger, where the kidnappers say that they want a combination to a safe, his father's safe, that only Robert Fischer knows, and that this safe also happens to contain an alternate will that would allow Robert to break up the company. The goal of the second layer is to basically get Robert to turn his animosity of his father towards his Uncle Peter. He gives himself the idea, and this is reflected when his own projection ends up confessing to being behind the kidnapping, which is wild. He gives himself the idea. The way that they show the progress of this Inception working on Robert is through the numbers 528491. In the first layer, when they ask Robert for the combination to the safe, like, what's the combination? Give me the first numbers that come to your head. He comes up with this random number, 528491.
528491.
We see this number pop up a few more times throughout the rest of the movie. It's the number on a napkin that a hot girl gives him, it's the hotel room numbers, and finally, it's the combination to the safe that brings everything together in this, from the third layer, the final level, you could say. It's even the title of one of the songs to the soundtrack. That too. There are a lot of theories about what exactly this number could mean, like maybe it's a date, or maybe it's supposed to be pointing to the specific verse in the Bible, or maybe it's using numberology to... It's none of that. Allegedly, Christopher Nolan Chrissy Inn, as I like to call him, has stated that the number was random.
Tired of this shit!
The importance of this number in this movie is that Robert comes up with it himself, and the team feeds it back to him as they are planting these ideas in each of the layers. Because Robert was the one that came up with the idea, whether it was the numbers or whether it was his Uncle Peter is planning to betray him, the fact that he was the one coming up with the ideas makes Inception way more likely. It's way more likely to be successful. So in the third layer, there are actually 2 safes that Robert punches this number into. I have a small complaint about this. So we know that if you have a safe in a dream, the subject is going to populate it with whatever they're trying to protect, or things that they want, or things that they learn, that kind of thing. And when Maul kills Fischer, Eames actually says something like, "Oh, I was so curious to see what was going to be in there with this big safe."
It's a shame. I really wanted to know what's going to happen in there. I swear we had this one.
That implies that he didn't know what was going to be behind there, or they didn't know what Robert was going to have behind there. But Ariane also calls this level the hospital. So my thought is that Ariane maybe studied the hospital that Maurice had died in, and then put details from there in throughout this winter base thing to automatically have that association for Fischer and make him more likely to have his father's hospital room inside the safe. Alternatively, the hospital room was planned, and that safe was actually just a door. Like, Fischer could have entered any number into that door and it would have opened. It wasn't a real safe. Unclear. But whatever, we're not losers, so we're not gonna think too hard about it. Once Fischer is inside of the hospital room, inside that big safe, he's the one who is populating it with the projection of his father. And his projection starts out with the last thing that his actual father said to him.
I was disappointed.
But then, Eames gets to watch as Robert opens the final safe with the numbers that Robert himself came up with. And it's there that he finds the will and a paper pinwheel. The team had planted the idea that the safe was going to have this will, so it makes sense that it's there. The pinwheel, though? This was something that had shown up in multiple pictures, both in reality and inside of Robert's dream wallet. It's representative of one of the few happy moments Robert had with his father. Perhaps one of the few moments that he ever felt loved by his father. It's the symbol of Robert's hope and longing for his father's love. Because he's the one that's populating the safe or whatever inside of it, he is essentially convincing himself that his father secretly was sentimental, and his father did, in fact, love Robert. He kept that paper pinwheel because he confirms that hope and that longing for love. And because of the scenario that the team had set up for him, this redemption and reclamation of the relationship with his father that he always wanted is inextricably linked to dissolving his father's company. I really enjoy the double whammy of catharsis that the end of Inception has. Like, not only do we have a man who is letting go of the guilt and the grief of his dead wife, but we've also got this young man finally getting the reconciliation that he always wanted with his father and confirming the love that his father always had for him. Even though the relationship of Fischer and his now departed father is essentially a manipulation and was manufactured by the team, does it really matter? Isn't it nicer for Fischer to believe that his father truly cared and loved about him more than he ever expressed and more than Robert ever saw, versus the bitter old man whose last word to him was disappointed? Even though it isn't real, that has become Fischer's reality. And I guess reality is what you make it. What does the ending actually mean? The end of Inception has sparked a lot of debate as to whether Dom escaped limbo or if the entire movie all along was just a dream anyway. And then we've got Hans Zimmer firing off on all cylinders, making love to the brass section, especially with that ending score called Time. And then there's that darn top. Does the top fall down at the end, Chris? Sea-Dog? What happens to the top at the end, Nolte? There are no shortage of theories out there, like how maybe Maul is the one who escaped limbo and she's been trying to get Dom, who's been trapped through the entire time, out of limbo. Or maybe Maul and the children were never real to begin with and they were all just a dream. Whoa! Maybe Ariane is his therapist. Maybe it's all Arthur's dream. Whoa! But now it's our turn, and we ask, What did any of this mean? Inception throws a lot of different ideas at us. The reality of our dreams versus the reality of waking life, the crushing weight of guilt and regret, and the idea that we can control our own reality. At its heart, the film is about Cobb's journey. Drowning in regret. Cobb is drowning in regret. He avoids his children in his dream because they are a painful reminder of the last time he saw them, that missed goodbye where he didn't get to see their faces again. Mal represents this regret, and she drags him into doubt of his ability to move on from his past and look forward to a future with his children without her. Cobb letting go of Mal signifies Cobb's choice to face reality. The reappearance of his children isn't a new dream, but a reflection of his decision to move forward. There are two ways that you could interpret this ending if you wanted to. One way is that dreams represent our hopes and our goals, and that we are in fact the architects of our own reality. The other is a cautionary tale, a life wasted on regret, like the one that Cobb almost led. Did the top fall down? Does Cobb truly escape? I think you could look at as many background details or totems or wedding rings or tops as you want and justify whatever theory you want to roll with. But I think the important part and the true answer that the movie gives us is it doesn't matter. Whoa! The ending is less about whether Cobb escaped or not, and more about his choice to accept reality, dream or not, because it holds the potential for happiness. Cobb walks away from the top as soon as he hears the voices of his children. Letting go and happiness with the people that he loves becomes his reality. Whether the top falls or not doesn't matter. Inception isn't just a confusing, cerebral, pew-pew action movie. It explores memory, regret, and the power of choice. It asks us, what is real? And then, more importantly, what do you choose to believe? Take a leap of faith. Embrace the present moment, dream or not. And above all, choose to live a life that you don't want to escape from. My name is Kyrie. This has been Flights of Fantasy. And until next time, I want you to live well, stay safe, dream on.